Okay, next up, we've got our friend and longtime supporter, Greg Cassidy. He's going to he's going to show you how to do a presentation for new tracks or a model railroad clinic or train show. Greg?
Well, thank you, Tom. All right. Hello, everyone. Most of you know me. I'm Greg, and I'm going to run through a quick presentation about how to create a model railroad presentation. We're going to use that word a lot. Before I start it, I want to say that I appreciate both Steve's and David for doing their presentations before this one because it gave you two of the three different formats that you sometimes can see presentations being done online. Steve's was live, Dave's was a video, and now we're going to go through a slideshow, as most people call it. So let me start going through this. I do want to say that most of this is taken from an article that's written, so there's a lot of text, but I have thrown some photos in it to make it a little less boring. Now, so you're thinking about creating a model railroad presentation, and it doesn't have to be model railroad, any type of railroad presentation. One thing about this hobby is we're all exceedingly passionate about it. Some of us have different aspects of it that really drive us. It might be modeling, it might be running trains, it might be the history of railroads or the history of railroad equipment. Um, there are a lot of things that you might find passionate. And one of the things that I find many modelers and railroaders like to do is to share their passion. Now, things that you might want to share could be a technique, something that you built, or something that you learned how to build, or something that you want to share with someone about a tip that you picked up or something that you developed. Sharing that kind of stuff is good for the hobby. And it's also enjoyable if you feel comfortable doing it. You can present your information in person to an audience or online also to an audience. And it isn't just to help you feel more fulfilled and to help sharing stuff. If you're working towards an NMRA Achievement Program certificate, it can help fulfill some of those requirements as well. So I'll go through breaking down how you can create and deliver a presentation. First thing I want to clear up is it a clinic or is it a presentation? And while there are definitions of these, we use the words interchangeably quite often. But very often it boils down to a clinic being something that is teaching a skill or a technique, whereas a presentation is sharing information either through photos or through talking about it. And there is some crossover, and very often a presentation can include parts that are a clinic. Both of them can be delivered in person to an audience or online. If you're working towards an AP certificate, they can count in different ways, and you'll see that later. So what should you present? It might be something that interests you. It might be something that you've picked up and you really think would help other people. There's nothing like sharing something with other modelers and they go, wow, that really helped me. That makes you feel good and it helps the hobby. Now, things that you might be interested in sharing or talking about could be either a structure or a scene on a diorama or a model railroad that you created, or a technique that you've developed, maybe something that you're doing in weathering or in painting. Some information about a specific railroad that you're interested in. It could be the railroad you're modeling and you just found out some information that you think some of your friends could find useful. It could be your layout or a modular setup at a show that you want to share with some of your friends or an audience. It could be something about a tool that you've just discovered, or using a tool that isn't necessarily used for that purpose, but you found a way to make that work. Again, when you see somebody, their eyes open wide, when you say, yeah, you can use this for that, it makes you feel good. Now, whether you're presenting live, it could be at a club or a division or an online platform like NewTracks or some other Zoom clinics. Our Potomac division does a monthly Zoom clinic. Uh, your format's going to depend on the topic and the audience, um, whether it's a live audience and you're doing it in person or online. This shows a variety of different ways of doing presentations. Um, the one in the upper right shows a live presentation or a live clinic where a fellow modeler was showing how he creates gravel. Below that is a clinic that I was giving to an online audience. On the upper left is a presentation about something that was built being presented online. And on the lower left is an actual presentation of the history of a particular railroad. So clinics, presentations, they can be done in person, they can be done online. And choosing your format is not always going to be up to you. Usually, if you have something that you want to share and you've gotten together with a group, they're going to control whether you're doing it to a live audience because it might be a meeting, or it might be a club get together, or it might be an NMRA division meeting, or it could be something online. Again, it could be a club type meeting. We do ours online once a week, or it could be something like NewTracks or an NMRA division online. Now, if you're doing a live presentation, as you saw with Steve, sometimes props like rolling stock and stuff are great to show online. Steve has an advantage that his equipment is very big. If he was showing some HO or N scale equipment, the other Steve would have to have his phone in a lot closer to be able to see it. Now, if you're doing a live presentation using photographs, you can use a laptop or a digital projector to show your slides on a screen. There's a couple different formats. I've been at ones where you're showing it on a screen. There are others where it'll just be shown on a large format TV screen. This is me a couple of years ago doing a presentation for our division, and it was just a laptop that was talking to the projector up at the top, and I would just step through the slides as I was commenting on them. Now, if you're doing an online presentation, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be using Zoom. There are others, but they're just not used as much for casual get-togethers like this. More often than not, photos and slides will show up better online than physical objects. It's not to take anything from Steve's display. He has the advantage of large equipment. But I have seen people trying to show something like a small locomotive in HO or N scale on their video camera. And because of things like lighting or background and stuff, it sometimes doesn't work very well. If you are going to be showing something larger, like perhaps a layout, I have seen that done using a phone as a camera on Zoom, and it can work. Again, if you have enough lighting, but you want to move your camera very slowly. It's real easy to be moving the camera as you're talking, and people are trying to keep up with it without getting motion sickness. So if you're showing something like a layout, move your camera slowly. Now, whether you're doing a live or a virtual presentation, images are really good at telling your story. The old saying, picture's worth 1,000 words. you'll want to use sharp and well-lit photographs without a cluttered background. And sometimes you have to work with what you have. But if you're able to take photos, consider taking the photo of what you want to talk about without any type of clutter in the background, using some type of backdrop like a white poster board. I tend to use a piece of foam core that I always keep sitting by my bench. Uh, that can help isolate what you're talking about or what you want the audience to be able to see. If you need to show some small detail like brake rigging or the interior of something, uh, make sure that it's well lit and that the photograph really shows what you're talking about instead of just, if you can see under there in the shadows, that's what I'm talking about. Try to avoid that. Um, as I said, if you're doing video, um, and this is more often with a layout or something, try to avoid being shaky or fast moving. Now, if you're taking video of an actual locomotive, you're doing a presentation about a particular railroad or something, uh, then usually you don't need to worry about that. And if you're using photographs, try to get as many as you can. And that gives you the opportunity to go through them and pick out the best ones that actually illustrate what you're trying to communicate with your audience. Um, now we're going to move into PowerPoint or an equivalent program. Uh, what I'm working in right now is PowerPoint, and this is usually your go-to program for going through photographs. Now, if you're doing a photo presentation, whether it's to a live audience or online, you can just have your series of photographs and step through them as you're talking about them. And I've seen effective presentations done that way. The advantage of using a program like PowerPoint allows you to put text or highlights or arrows, stuff like that, onto your photographs so that your audience is really clued in about what you're talking about. If you want to highlight something or if you want some text to really drive the point home. And using PowerPoint is pretty easy. You don't have to be an expert in it just to bring photos in and then be able to step through them. Uh, being able to add stuff like graphics and text is not difficult. If you do want to learn more about it, there are plenty of online tutorials that you can go to. Um, this shows a presentation that I had done here on New Tracks a couple of years ago, and this was just one of the slides, and it shows how I added text and arrows pointing out what I was trying to illustrate to the audience at the time. And this was one of the build-alongs that we had back then. I kind of enjoy this stuff because this is what I used to do at work. But it's very simple to do, and you can get as basic or as elaborate as you want to. Whatever you're going to be doing your clinic on or your presentation on, you want to know the topic. I had to give a presentation last year, and it was something that I had been using for a while, but I didn't really know a lot about how I was using it, um, or how I could communicate to others how I was using it. So I actually had to do a fair bit of research online. And I not only found enough to help me give the presentation, but I learned a lot more that helped me in my everyday use of the item. Um, if you're using images that you got off the internet, be a little careful about them. Uh, if it's easy to get permission to use it, it's worth trying to. Um, your presentation is not going to be seen by thousands and thousands of people, most likely, but you don't want to be put in the position where somebody gets in touch with you and says, I didn't give you permission to use that. And it is possible to get in trouble for that. So if you can, get permission. If you can't, people fly under the radar, but it's something to be aware of. When you're talking over your presentation, whether it's just photos or you're using something like PowerPoint, or even if you're doing a live presentation and you're handing stuff around for people to see, your personality will determine whether it's easy for you to talk freely about the subject or if you need to make some kind of outline or something to follow along to make sure you cover all of your points and uh, don't start rambling, which sometimes can lead your audience to start losing attention. And that's going to be different for every person. If you are using a show like or an application like PowerPoint, uh, don't cover your slides with a lot of text. Sometimes that can just get a little boring. And I will point out that this presentation has a lot of text, but as I said, that's because it was brought from an article which was almost all text. Now, if you're going to be using Zoom for your presentation, it throws a couple of curveballs of its own. Um, I am happy to say that if you're watching this presentation on our live Zoom show, then you've at least mastered Zoom well enough to log on and get to the show. Now, if you're going to be doing a presentation in Zoom, there's a couple more steps that you need to go, but it's nothing that isn't difficult. Um, you want to prepare your presentation beforehand and have it open on your desktop before you log in, and definitely before you're ready to start sharing. You can't open the application or your photographs once you're in the share window. You have to have them already opened so that they're ready to be selected. And I'll have some images after this that will show what I'm talking about. At the bottom of the screen is the green share button. Some people call it a scare button. That's very well highlighted, and that gets you into the window where you can select what you're going to show. Once you're in that window, you select either the photo or the PowerPoint program, and that's when you start sharing. If you're using something like PowerPoint, then you need to go to full screen, and I'll show you two ways that you can do that. Now, this shows my desktop, and before I would log into Zoom or before I would go to share, I would want to open this program. Excuse me. Have it open on your desktop, and then Zoom will be open over that. Then you come down here to the share button when it's your turn to share, and that's when you're ready to start your presentation. That'll open up your share window, which looks like this. And usually on the far left is going to be what's open on your desktop. And that's what you want to select. Now, it may be the first photo of a series of photos that you have that you want to step through, or it could be your PowerPoint program. But you'll either highlight that and click share at the bottom, or you can double click it, and that will open it in the share window. But you're not done yet. First of all, you have to make sure that you're unmuted. And I'm looking to make sure that I haven't been boring you all so far. Yes, I am unmuted. When you open your presentation, there are sometimes going to be some Zoom windows that may be in the way, and it really depends on how you've had your Zoom program oriented. And I'll show you what I mean. If you're new at this, it doesn't hurt to do a test run with a friend or a spouse. If they have another computer, a laptop or something, just say, can I take a couple of minutes and I'll start a Zoom program and you log on to it, and then I'll open up my share window and we'll see how it goes. And then your friend or your spouse can tell you whether it worked or not. And it doesn't hurt to go through your program so they can maybe critique it a little bit. You also want to be aware of your internet speed. Um, I've seen a number of presentations or clinics that have been hampered because they kept freezing or the image would get small because they had very low bandwidth. You can check your internet speed at speedtest.net, and you want to make sure that you have a good enough speed that your sharing isn't going to be interrupted. Now, once you've opened your share program, it can have a few things that are in the way, such as this pylon on the right that has some of the windows. This can be closed if you click this little line right here. It'll collapse this and you can move it out of the way. This Zoom control panel is going to be in your way, so you have to work around that. Something else to be aware of, if you're putting together a slideshow, I try not to put anything important over here on the right-hand side because many people will be watching it and they'll still have their pylon open. And I've seen that sometimes covering stuff that may have been important. So I try not to put anything really important over there. Now, in order to go full screen with your slideshow, if you're working in PowerPoint, there's two ways to do it. The first one is you can click slideshow and from the beginning up here at the top, and that takes this slide, which is going to be your first slide, and it opens it up full screen. The other way is to click this little screen button down here. People at PowerPoint decided to give you two options at how to do it. I'm sure they got their reasons. But I usually just click this little one down at the bottom. Now, let's say you've run through your presentation, your clinic. Everybody has gone, wow, they're all applauding you. Now, sharing information, presenting a clinic, it doesn't just help the community, it'll help you as well, especially if you want to progress through the AP program. This can help you work towards your author's certificate, which includes live clinics, online presentations, and other multimedia, or your volunteer certificate. You can earn points through clinics or educational contributions in an NMRA setting. You want to make sure you document all your work if you're doing that. For achievement program points, if you're working towards your author, your presentations can count under Section B, which is live clinics, and that can be if you're presenting to an audience or an online audience, or Section C, multimedia, which can be recorded clinics and Zoom presentations. And kind of stay on top of it. The NMRA is challenged by trying to keep their AP program in line with the technology, which is always running ahead of them. And they're always struggling to keep up to make sure that something that should be qualifying is actually stated in their guidelines. And you can go to the NMRA Achievement Program Facebook group to ask questions about something you may be doing or to see what their latest guidelines are. Whether you're new in the hobby or you're an old hand, you probably have something that you could talk about. Some people like to share information. Some people like to show other people how they learn something. Other people may not want to. They prefer to just sit back and listen, and that's fine. But there is a certain amount of enjoyment with sharing something that you've learned, some knowledge that you picked up, whether you learned it from somebody else or you just stumbled upon it on your own. It's easy to get started. One of the easiest ways is to just have a couple photos sent in to my build. And then when the pictures are being shown, you can talk about that. That gets you over the first hurdle of talking to an audience if that intimidates you. And then you can take pictures of something you built and say, well, yeah, I'd like to share this with my club or with my NMRA division or something. And you may be asked to do it either in person or in an online presentation. And you'll get a lot out of that. It makes you feel like you've been helpful and you've helped inspire others. Uh, and as I always say, I look forward to hearing to what you have to say. So get building and get presenting. And I'll see you here hopefully someday. And thank you. And Tom, I'll give it back to you now.
Thank you, Greg. Are there any questions for Greg on anything at all? There's a
Very well done, Greg. Pat here.
Good. I've got a question for you, Greg.
Yes.
How do you get over that antsy feeling of getting in front of a crowd of people and making a presentation?
I got over that in the Boy Scouts when I had to do public speaking, but I can't say how you can get over it. You can try talking to a few people at a club. I think it's going to have to be each individual's personality as to how, if they find that intimidating, how they get over it. It is easier in an online to me, it's easier in an online format such as this than standing in front of a live audience and giving the presentation. That thing about imagining them in their underwear does not work when they're a bunch of old model railroaders.
That's a terrible thought.
Just a comment, one comment, Greg,
Yeah, go ahead,
on
Phil.
that. I think thing that's really important is start with something you're really familiar with.
Mhm.
That way you're going to feel more comfortable. Don't start with something complex. Take that technique you've done, that model you've done, and I think that makes it a lot easier to get started and go through it. And like you said, start with a small group. Do it for if you're in a division and you go to a divisional meeting to do a clinic, it's unlikely there are going to be more than 10 or 15 people there. A lot of times, I mean, I did a clinic for a divisional meeting over the weekend, and we had 8 people in the room. And it's really easy in that kind of environment to get used to it. Go through it and do it a few times on your own. Before I drop off, I wanted to, for everyone, this is something I've been kind of pushing in our region to get more and more clinics.
Mhm.
This is your best friend right here. I mean, if you're going to do clinics, this is your best friend, because the reality is, if you're going to take one picture, take 3 and move it around a little bit, because you can pick the one you like that's the best. But there's something else in here that's a really cool feature. There's a timer in here, because what I find when I model is I get absorbed in the modeling and I forget to stop occasionally and take a picture. Putting a presentation together about a build is really easy if you go back and when you unload the pictures out of your phone, and with the new phones, you just plug in your USB-C into the bottom of your phone connected to your computer. It'll show up on your computer as a drive, and you can upload the pictures right off your phone. When you've got all those pictures in a folder, put them in a folder, store them up while you're building the model. If you've got 4 projects and it takes you 2 months, put all those pictures in a folder and then go back and look at them and say, they're going to be sequential. How do I tell the story of my build? So the thing that's in here is you set that timer to 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever you want. And when it goes off, it reminds you it's time to start taking some pictures. And I think if you do that, you'll find that this becomes a really easy process. You're just documenting what you're doing. And what's amazing is you look at the amazing models that we have here on my build. The reality is every one of those, if you take a set of pictures as you build it, you could give a presentation, a talk on how you built it. It's just not that complicated to do. And once you've done it a few times, it becomes really a lot easier to do in front of a group of people. Anyway, enough said. Thanks.
And Phil, you're right. I'll tell you, one of the reasons that I started taking photographs as I was building, and unfortunately it wasn't until I had already built a number of kits that I started doing this. And obviously it wasn't until I had a phone and it was really easy to do it. was I would find myself struggling to do something that I had done before. And I'd say, okay, 2 years ago, I managed to get this wood to get this kind of effect, this color, either using paint or a stain or something. How did I do that? And I didn't remember. So I started taking pictures every time I'd do a certain step that I wanted to remember. And after I stained something and then painted it a certain color, I'd take a picture showing the stain and the paint that I used. And then after I put something together, I'd take a picture showing how I put it together. And that kept building upon itself originally so I could go back and look, how did I do that so I could replicate it? Because I really got a bad memory. But that started playing into developing these folders of pictures of everything that I've built. That led to putting them together into videos on a YouTube channel, which led to the development of a YouTube channel. They've got 250 videos on. By the way, if anybody wants to see any of those, it's Greg Cassidy's Workshop on YouTube. But you're right. Before we had these things, a lot of life was very different. I remember back in the 80s and 90s, most presentations in clinics were done with slideshows. And you had to have a, 35 millimeter camera, most likely taking pictures of trains or something, and the slideshow would be talking about the trains. And you had the pictures that you had because you weren't taking 3 or 4 pictures of everything because you had to pay to have those processed. So what we can do nowadays with our electronics, with taking pictures with our phones, with putting them on computers, and with putting them together into a slideshow using something like PowerPoint just makes doing a presentation so easy, whether it's to a live audience or to an online audience. So I recommend anybody, if they want to, give it a try.
If
Greg,
you
this,
don't mind, this is Father Ron. I'd like to answer Steve's concern about how do you get used to it. I'm a professional in the sense that I do this every weekend. You don't get used to it. And especially if you're with people you've never known before. Some of the parishes I go to on the weekend, I don't know any of the people there. If they could see my knees knocking, it might be more pleasant for them or humorous for them. One of the things to keep in mind is that you're in a friendly audience.
Mhm.
You guys are presenting to fellow modelers who are interested in what you have to say. So don't be afraid to do this because they want to hear from you. And it doesn't matter what your dialect is, how you pronounce words. They want to hear because they're interested. So you've got a friendly audience all the time when you're doing these presentations. And they're tolerant of mistakes. That's the other thing to remember. They have probably had some of the experiences you have had. And so doing so is not something to be afraid of. You're going to make a mistake. In fact, my speech teacher in high school and college said, unless you're willing to act like a fool, you most probably will be one. Um, and so you have to be willing to make mistakes and to look foolish. And you'll be very accepted in spite of that.
Yep.
You took the words
Thank
out
you.
of my mouth, Father, because that was exactly what I was afraid of when I did my presentation. It wasn't necessarily, my new tracks members that I was afraid of. It was potentially all the people on YouTube, but definitely not. You're absolutely correct. Everything you said.
I
have a follow-up with Greg's presentation. When you're putting together a multi-segment program, as you might, for example, in connection with a NMRA division meet or something else, it is good to mix up your media. So not everything is a slideshow, not everything is live, not everything is trying to look at a table with itty bitty pieces on it, but mix it up. And I'm going to put in a plug for O-Scale Central's upcoming monthly program, which is on the 22nd Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m., we're going to have the guy who heads Sunset Third Rail, Scott Mann, on, who'll be talking in an interview format about tariffs and what's happening there, in addition to telling us what's going on with Sunset Third Rail. We're then going to have a video of Ed Rapace's Pennsylvania Railroad layout, which will be narrated by Al Puglisi. And then we've got a couple of other features, and each one is different. And I find that if there isn't a PowerPoint deck in civilization that is worth 4 hours of sitting in a chair and watching it. So if you can liven it up, and use different media, you'll get a nicer flow and break up people's visuals on it.
Mm-hmm. It's all about keeping them awake and keeping their attention.
June 22nd, 4 p.m. Look on our website, oscalecentral.com, for the invitation. Everybody can go. Everybody can participate. You don't have to be an O-Scale Central member.
I'll be there.
Greg, for me, this is fantastic because this is where I lack. I've never made a presentation online so I'm going to be going back. I know this is taped and I'll be going back and looking at it over and over.
Okay.
And a shout out to Tom Farrell. A week or so ago, he was talking he was making an old period sign using AI. Well, after the show, I was up at 1 o'clock in the morning. They were seeing artwork for my logos for my layout. And this is just a rough one on the front of an envelope. It's got the correct stuff inside. And I made several. This is going to be going on my door going into my train room.
Oh, nice job, Larry.
Then I asked to make it horizontal. And as Tom pointed out, you make a little change, they turn it. I was expecting to see the image change, but no, it gave me another image, but it was about 96% what I had in my head. I was going to try to hand paint that, and that saved me a lot of time. Thank you. Thank you.
There is a way to get it to modify that specific picture if you want a slight change. One of our viewers pointed out that, I was showing that every time I did one of these, it came out different. There is a way to make it change that specific picture. I'll do a follow-up. I can't remember how he did it.
Yeah, but Tom, that's only if your AI isn't mad at you because you've been doing that.
Oh, I use 2 versions of it, and I put in the same parameters. But anyway, when I changed to a horizontal, there's what it produced. And
they just start over from scratch. That's
what I had in my head. I had that in my head 6 years ago, and I was going to try to hand paint it on the face of my layout when you enter it.
That's gorgeous. That's stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that, huh? And we use AI on NewTrax. Greg gave me a article, and I asked AI to turn it into a PowerPoint. And then I had, of course, I have a lot of programs that go on top of that. I have grammar checkers and all kinds of programs that pile on, but half of them are AI based. But by the time you see stuff in the new magazine, for example, it's gone through 3 or 4 different AI engines, and as you'll see, the magazine is of the same quality as the 4 big magazines, and they have staffs of 10 to 20, and I'm a staff of 1, me and my AI. And it's a very powerful tool, and I think you're going to see it more and more, Larry and Greg. It's just amazing if it doesn't kill us in the end. Or useless carbon units, as Star Trek used to say.